Shadow Energy and Climate Change Minister Ted O'Brien. Well, the acting PM Richard Marles says we are not signing up to this because we don't have and don't want a civil nuclear industry, but we're very happy to have one on the ships and have it with our submariners, so it's fine on sea, not fine on land. Help me understand the difference.
Peter, I don't know if I can help you understand the difference because there's very little difference indeed. Even the AUKUS submarines, I mean, the nuclear reactors in those subs, yes, they provide for propulsion, but they also generate energy. And so Miles doesn't have a clue, but what's the most embarrassing thing that's happened here is Chris Bowen is overseas at the Climate Change Summit. Our two AUKUS allies do a deal. The UK puts out a media release about advanced nuclear technology, saying it expects Australia will sign up. We are part of the very forum, the vehicle that created this deal. It's called the Gen 4 International Forum. But then the government came out through a mystery spokesperson. The minister didn't even front the camera to say, we're not signing any deal. We're not signing any deal. We don't want any nuclear energy. It's an utter mess. It's an international embarrassment. The best thing the Prime Minister could do is just send Chris Bowen home. We don't need him on the international stage.
Yeah, I do make the point. He was the worst migration minister ever, more boats than anyone else. He torpedoed Shorten's chances with those crazy tax policies in 2019. But unfortunately for all of us now, is in charge of our energy future, and it's going to hell in a handcart. The Labor-led inquiry into nuclear power, yes, I think it's a bit of a campaign stitch-up. But one thing happened that I think Labor will be quite upset about. A professor of nuclear science and engineering at the world-leading Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Professor Buongiorno, said he can see no reason why Australia can't have a nuclear reactor within 12 years. He says, look at the UAE, and Australia, he says, would start on a much stronger note than the Emirates. That's a good news story that seems to be buried everywhere other than Sky News.
Indeed, and I'm grateful that you're revealing it because it's similar advice we've heard from other experts in the field of nuclear energy. Australia can do this, and the timeline that the coalition has put forward is consistent with their view. And Professor Buongiorno, to whom you refer, so MIT is probably the most renowned institution in the world for nuclear energy. This guy is in charge. He's their number one. And he knows the international landscape better than anyone. And you should have heard him in that hearing, Peter. Not only did he say Australia could do it, he was basically sort of shaking his head saying, but Australia's not starting from scratch. Australia already has a regulator. Australia already has a nuclear reactor. Australia already has expertise. Australia is way ahead of the game compared to other new entrants in the civil nuclear game, which again affirms the policy we are taking to this next election. I know this committee is a political stitch-up on the part of Labor, but it's an own goal. Half the time I wonder why on earth they're doing it, because it's proving them wrong and that the coalition is on the right track for the country.
Well, as we said, I mean, Bowen's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Let's go to that 2035 emissions target fight, because I think this is key to the election. Labor do not want to have to reveal in February, as they should under the terms of the Paris Agreement and their own regulations, what our new emissions targets will be. We're due to put out in February next year the 2035 targets. Tanya Plibersek says, well, we have to get advice from the Climate Change Authority before we can put them out. But back in January, Chris Bowen says, I've already requested that advice. Here's a copy again of the letter he sent off to the inquiry. And he says also, I want to make it very clear to the Australian people that they will know about these targets before the election. So why the cloak and dagger here? Why the secrecy, Ted?
Peter, I think, number one, it's because when it comes down to it, they are weak and they are cowards. Number two, they are hiding what they know is the truth. Their next target is only going to make it harder for Australian families and businesses. Prices are going to go through the roof. Last Friday, Frontier Economics released their independent modelling of Labor's current plan to create a net zero electricity grid. It ends up being 5 times more expensive than Chris Bowen has been telling the Australian people. So even with their current policies of the 43% renewable emissions reduction by 2030, well, that's going to send the country broke all the way through. I mean, 5 times more than what they've been telling the Australian people. So they don't want to talk about a 2035 target because they know the truth. It's only going to make it worse. Australians will pay more businesses will go insolvent, more families will have to go on hardship arrangements, and they want to hide that. They want to hide it all the way through to the next election. They are cowards, they are weak, and they should turn up, front up to the Australian people and tell them the truth.
Well, I'm sure you got your FOIs in, but I tell you, there's quite a lot of documents I would be chasing. Ted O'Brien, thank you for your time as always.